You want to lead the pledge?
Yeah. Yeah, what happened to Bill?
I don't know. He was, I thought, right behind us.
It's okay.
There we go. George, are you going to make comments? Sure.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is George Wolf. I'm Lower Paxton Township's manager, and I will summarize the items of business that are on the supervisor's workshop agenda this evening. The first item of business is discussion regarding a stormwater complaint affecting 4905 Harmon Drive. The township engineer has reviewed this location and is providing comments to the supervisors this evening. The second item is review of the proposed 2018 stormwater projects prior to advertisement for bids. Then representatives from HRG will discuss potential preparation of grant applications for transportation and recreation projects. That will be followed by continued discussion of proposed zoning ordinance amendments to accommodate an age-restricted housing plan for a 149-acre tract of land on the east side of Colonial Road, south of Earl Drive. This discussion is with Traditions of America. Then the board will continue discussing a request for funding from the Central Pennsylvania Conservancy to be used for the acquisition and preservation of land on Blue Mountain. And then finally, I will discuss with the board a proposal from the Capital Area Council of Governments to jointly negotiate the upcoming Comcast cable franchise agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, that completes my summary of the agenda this evening. The supervisors are at the podium, and I believe they're ready to begin business.
This meeting of the Lower Paxton Board of Supervisors will come to order. Let's please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mrs. Lindsay.
Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
I just wanted to announce that prior to this meeting, the board met and received information from the township manager. We discussed a number of pending personnel issues, and we also discussed a number of scheduling issues. And with that, is there any public comment on any item that is not on the agenda tonight? Good evening.
John Trish, 600 Prince Street. I was just wondering, I went onto the website tonight to see the agenda of the meeting tonight, and right after I pulled up the calendar for tonight's a meeting, I got a Yahoo ad. Are we to be expecting that?
A Yahoo ad?
That's not with our website. That would be, I assume, with your web browser.
So that's what Comcast.
Again, that's not us. We don't have.
Well, it never happened before, so I just thought I'd bring
Well,
it to everybody.
there's no advertisements on our website.
That's what I thought. That's why I.
No
I mean,
problem.
I was looking at the calendar and it said tonight's agenda, Jason Hines, got a problem. And then boom, right in the middle of looking at it, Yahoo come up. So,
Huh. Well, if it happens again, let us know so that we can ask for a portion of the proceeds from it.
You know
It
I
should
will.
not be happening.
you know I will.
Yeah, I know you will, John. Thank you for keeping an eye out for us. Anybody else have a comment on anything, comment or question, any item not on the agenda this evening? Okay, with that, we are going to have a discussion regarding a stormwater issue at 4905 Harmon Drive. Good evening.
Jason, is your green light on?
There we
Yeah,
go.
there we go.
Is that a little bit better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So good evening. Jason Hines with HRG, the Township Consulting Engineer. We were made aware of some concerns at 4905 Harmon Drive that were brought before the board at a previous meeting related to the resident's sump pump and accelerated rate of cycles of his sump pump. We were tasked with engaging with the resident, Mr. Nick Barrelette, and trying to gain an understanding of the issues that he brought before you previously. We did have a meeting with Mr. Barrelette, Lower Paxton Township staff, and Lower Paxton Township Authority staff on March 12th. And at that meeting, Nick showed us his sump pump and described the issues that he was having. The outcome of that meeting was for us to go back and try to brainstorm and research some options that might be available to Mr. Barrelette to potentially improve the conditions at his property. We drafted a memo to the township dated April 3rd that outlined 4 different alternatives that we think would be viable options to potentially improve the conditions at his property. I understand, has the board received that letter and had a chance to review it?
Yes.
I could just summarize the options quick here, and then we could get into any questions that you may have. The first option would be to possibly install a pumping well on the exterior of the home. This would reduce the frequency that the sump pump would cycle. It would potentially eliminate the regular cycling of the sump pump, which would only really then cycle during significant rainfall events when the water table would be elevated. Our understanding of the residents' concerns are that the sump pump's accelerated rate of cycle creates a a major disruption to the residents and the occupants of the home, which is understandable. Secondary concerns were related to potential flooding should that sump pump ever mechanically fail. Our second alternative would be to install a secondary sump pump on the interior of the home. So that would mitigate any issues that could occur should that original sump pump ever exhibit any kind of mechanical failure. The third alternative that may be worth exploring would be to consult with a basement waterproofing expert contractor. The thinking behind that is they deal with these sort of situations almost on a daily basis and may have some suggestions that could potentially help Mr. Barolett out. And the final alternative that we had listed in our memo is related to technology that's currently used for on-lot septic systems when you have an elevated groundwater table. It basically involves creating a barrier around the home with a impervious geomembrane, and then the soil that falls within that barrier is pumped full of air with an air compressor. So it serves to lower the groundwater table directly beneath that area that's kind of blocked off. So those were the alternatives that we thought may be beneficial to Mr. Barolett. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the board?
I guess, out of the four, do you have any recommendation that you feel is more appropriate than another?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think that any of these solutions fully address all of Mr.
issues.
Barolett's concerns.
Okay.
For example, the first option with the pumping well on the exterior of the home, that would certainly address the disruption that the occupants of the home have on a daily basis. The second option with the backup sump pump would address the issue of flooding should the original sump pump ever fail. And then the third and fourth options are more consultations with other experts in the field.
Jason, do you think the sump pump that's in the home now, is the well big enough? Is the sump pump big enough? Do you think if they were both a little bit bigger, would that help?
It could potentially reduce the frequency of the cycle with a bigger pump. However, the conditions there, the groundwater table wants to be above the elevation that the basement floor is. So it could potentially reduce the frequency that the sump pump runs, but it would still run pretty regularly.
And Jason, even with a larger unit, I'm guessing your recommendation would still continue to be to have a backup.
Correct.
Then would that backup be bigger than what he has now?
No, it wouldn't
Be the
need to
same?
be. Right now, he has a 3rd horsepower pump, and that's keeping his basement from taking on water, so
Okay.
it seems to be functioning adequately.
If you place the pump in a deeper hole, would that be sufficient, or would it have a major effect?
No, it really wouldn't, because the basement floor is actually, if you're familiar with the property, there's a stream that runs directly behind the resident's dwelling. The bed of that stream is actually above the elevation of his basement floor. So the groundwater table wants to be at approximately the water surface elevation in that stream. So if you lower the pump in the crock, the water table is still going to rise up to approximately that elevation in the stream bed.
So there's no really good alternative that's gonna,
No, unfortunately, we weren't able to determine an alternative that could address really all of his concerns. And it's really just because of the location of the property.
And are we convinced by the evidence that the improvements we made to the sewer lines, cutting off the groundwater, the rainwater from getting into those, that contributed to this situation?
I don't personally have knowledge of the property prior to that project. However, based on the conversations and discussions we've had with the property owner, I think it seems to be more than a coincidence that he seems to think the problem started around that same time.
Do we have any other examples of this in the township where this happened?
Not
I
to
know
my knowledge.
This takes a certain amount of just where it's located in the water table, and took I hate to say that perfect storm type thing, but it took a certain amount of things to come together to create that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Would it be possible, Jason, to ask Randy, since you deal with the storm? Oh, Randy's not here. I thought Randy was here. Okay.
Yeah,
I
no,
was
this,
thinking Randy Allen I was looking through, I thought he was here because he deals with the stormwater. Okay.
yeah, from our investigations and the discussions that we've had with Mr. Barolette, the issue doesn't seem to be a stormwater surface water issue. It's entirely a
ground.
groundwater issue.
Mhm.
Is, George, are any of these recommendations, do any of them fall within the purview of what the township actually can do?
yeah, that's the other problem.
That's,
Board members, I don't see the township having the ability to install improvements interior to a property, improving that property based upon a sanitary sewer project. Our sanitary sewer project, by essentially court order, mandates that we remove stormwater from our sanitary sewer system. And doing that is a requirement of state law. And it does not, in my mind, require that we improve properties who suffer because of groundwater thereafter.
That takes number 2 out of the,
yeah, that,
out of the running.
yeah,
It's almost cheaper to move the stream.
that could be challenging.
Does Mr. Bartlett have copy of this memo? I'm guessing he does, because it looks like at the bottom there's a says CC, so he's aware of our
Do you have a
engineer's
copy,
report.
you have a copy of, do you have any questions for? Could you come to the podium, please, if you have questions about the report?
Because all we have is what you have, as far as the information we're getting from the engineers. So if you have some observations to make, I'd like to hear them.
Thank you. As you can see, it's a complex situation, not only as a landowner, as a taxpayer, but also from a legal point of view. I understand the complexity of it. I did get the memo and had a chance to read it a week ago and after we met with Jason. And I do have one question regarding what was stated tonight. You said if I potentially got a larger sump pump motor that it might help with the frequency. But how does that change when it's an automatic indicator? Once it hits a certain level, it kicks on. Does that make a difference? Because the reason I'm asking is I've been looking into a sump pump that removes that allows the water to go a little higher, that will still turn on, but maybe not as often. Just Because remember, we talked about letting it go higher,
Right.
obviously, we're not gonna let it go that high. But even if I double, so how would getting a bigger motor help?
Yeah, my thought process there was you have a larger horsepower pump that has more suction to influence more discharge through the pump.
Okay,
So by increasing the flow rate out of the pump, you're taking the groundwater table down lower than your current pump that may have less horsepower in it. So then in turn, it's gonna take the groundwater a few more seconds or minutes to get back up to the elevation of your float.
would you recommend I do that as opposed to the idea that I had of allowing it to rise a little higher with a different device that triggers it?
I think that would give you a little bit more factor of safety. If you allow it to rise higher, and then in the event that I know you have a backup battery installed on your sump pump that should kick in should the power go off. But in the event that you have a failure, I mean, it could buy a little bit more time to make preparations if that water level's lower initially.
As I stated at the last meeting, I want to be part of the solution, and I will do everything I can to make things better. So I will go out and I will buy a larger sump pump to do what the engineer is recommending. But that's not going to stop the water problem. Since I was here last, it hasn't stopped. And it's been a very wet winter, as you can well imagine, and it really got to the point that it's unbearable at times. I don't even, one of my concerns that was not in the report is what's the value of my home now? I understand what you're saying, Mr. Wolf, when it comes to what the state required you to do. But if you reduce the value of my home as a result of it, is that fair? Because I don't know if I could sell my house. So I don't know what's fair in a court of law. I'm open to any suggestions. I'm back to my point. So if maybe getting the first point was a hydrological study, is it related to the creek? I have no problem with the pump being put outside my house. If that's what, I think your words were, would stop the daily disruption, I'm in favor of it. And I have no problem paying my electric bill for that.
Why don't you try this? You've indicated that you're willing to try a larger sump pump.
Yes, sir.
That's one of the recommendations from HRG. Why don't you try that?
Okay?
Let's see what impact that has, and then we can revisit whether or not that has enough of an impact to at least improve the quality of life, if nothing else.
I can do that. In fact, that will be done by this
May I
weekend.
just add an addendum to that? Based on HRG's recommendation, and I'll look to both of you for input on this one, but also the number 3 bullet, because it's at no cost. And that was what caught my attention with regarding the basement waterproofing experts to come in and have them just take a look. And maybe you've already done that, I don't know. But based on what Jason is suggesting, and I think what Mr. Lohman has said, Mr. Henry, excuse me, Lohman. It's okay. That I agree, based on the conversation, to do the larger sump pump. But I would, if it were me, I think I would also do number 3 because it's at no cost to me to see if somebody else has another opinion. We have our engineer's opinion. He's suggesting that you look at another basement waterproofing expert, and at no cost, I would pursue that as well. I mean, just a suggestion. That's what I would do if I were in your situation.
I have no problem doing that either. If they have an idea, that's
Yeah,
what sharing.
and obviously it's your choice, but I'm just saying that's what I would do based on what I've heard tonight.
Thank you.
Does the basement get wet around the walls, the bottom? No, okay. And has the sump pump ever overflowed into the basement?
One time when it failed in what we'll call was the 100-year storm that we had many years ago. And I accepted that
Okay.
with the and the volume of water that came through with that little creek. But what I want to emphasize is, for 17 years though, I didn't have a problem, except that one time. So it's now the groundwater that,
And in those 17 years, the pump was not running like it's running now.
oh, no, it never. It would turn on if there was a heavy
Right.
storm, but otherwise, never.
Never. Okay.
But I will
If he were
do is,
if he were to do the suggestion that Mr. Christmas just came up with, do you have any recommendations? Because there's a lot of waterproofing companies out there. Some are better than others, I would think. But, you know, to get somebody with a really a good qualified evaluation of his situation.
No, I don't have any personal recommendations on a particular contractor. I will say that I did look on Home Advisor, and that's how I became aware that a lot of these firms that serve the South Central PA region do offer free consultations. So that would be my recommendation. Check out Home Advisor.
We had to have it done, and we did do the waterproofing with the sump pump in our basement.
did you?
Yeah.
Did it work?
Yes, yes. It's a
Well,
mess.
Jason, does
but
that
they did.
website then list companies and organizations and their contacts?
Yes.
Okay, so that would help.
Sure. Like I said, I want to be part of the solution. I will contact them. I will get a larger sump pump. In fact, I will put that in this weekend. And we'll see if there's any change, and if there's not, then I will come back and let you know what the status is.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Take those first two steps, and then we'll see where things stand.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for working with us as we try to work with you.
Jason, I guess you might as well stay.
Yeah, stay
put.
put.
You and Jeff want to talk about the 2018 stormwater projects, as opposed to groundwater projects.
Yeah. Good evening, board members. Out to bid right now is 2018 stormwater project, and we wanted to come and summarize it for you and answer any questions. The bid opening is April 25th. So it involves 3 areas, Toff Tree Drive, and what happened there was that the storm system there now is outdated and too small, and we were having a surcharge at one of the drains. That then got under the road and damaged the road. So that will be an upgrade of the storm system plus a new road. Over at Coke Lane and Jonestown Road, there is a sheet flow coming out of the Heatherfield neighborhood that needs to be captured better than it is right now. It's getting out onto Jonestown Road. That's a small one there. And the real big one is in Claremont, and that's just an outdated system that is falling apart. And it's pretty big, so.
You just briefly summarized, but what is the expected engineer's estimate at this point?
I intentionally left that information out of the memo just because it's out to bid right now. I could give you a range
A
of what
range,
we
yeah.
expect. Between $1.5 to $2.5 million.
That's a pretty wide range. Yeah, that's,
But hopefully the bids will come in under the lowest range.
That's always the hope.
I have a friend who says hope is not a strategy. So, he's very wise.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, for either or both of you. Once the bids are open and we're awarding, what's our time frame for doing this? Are we doing them in 3 phases? Are we doing them all together? And do we have any time frame? Or is that all going to come after the fact of awarding the bids? And maybe my question's premature.
Yeah, it's a single contract that'll be awarded for all 3 areas.
Oh, that's
So
all
one
3.
contractor will be performing all the work.
Okay.
And we've stipulated in the contract documents that all the work needs to be complete by the end of November. this
Oh.
year, this season.
Good, before
So
bad
maybe-
weather.
They'll be working all three at one time, or they'll just do one at a time?
It'll be up to the contractor
Okay.
to make his schedule and allocate his resources, but I would envision that they probably will be doing work on some of the areas simultaneously.
That's their choice.
Okay.
Can you, just for the new guy, like, how were these prioritized? How did we end up with these three at this point? Is there
Well, there are more. A lot of times, it's what we can afford, how we can get the most out of the money that is there. Tree was a late addition because it is as bad as it is. And we didn't realize that the storm drain was surcharging till mid last year. So we felt we had to add that one. Claremont has been in the works for 6 or 7 years.
okay?
And that's how it is. HRG, we identify problems years in advance, and they are designed, and then when they're ready, they're put out to bid, and we can either do them or we can't.
And you try to match it up with the available money?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
okay, thank you.
But if they made it this far, they're in dire need.
Yeah,
So Jeff, we haven't done any since we did the Winfield Smith Street?
Correct.
Okay,
Well, yes, there was another area of Forest Hills adjacent to Tree last year. We called it the Rosewall
Okay.
Project.
but the last one was?
That was
over-
actually the last one.
That was the last one,
Yeah,
okay.
but they were both done, because Winfield was carried over from the year before
Right,
because of a
okay.
bidding issue.
That was last year that was done?
Yes. Still not quite done.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? We have public comment?
I'd like to know if these projects are just something that happened or from something from development that's happened, just as the gentleman earlier, we've repaired a water drain and he's got problems. Now, I've been coming to these meetings for over 20-some years. What are the projects we're talking about? We're talking about $2.5 million. What are these, what are we doing?
All the details are on the website that you were, maybe
I'm not on the
Yahoo
website,
got in the
Mr.
way, but
Mr. Henry, it says on here in the minutes, discussion. Review of the projects.
yes.
Okay.
Which he just did.
They named 3 areas. What are we doing?
Those 3 areas are the 3 projects.
And we're doing what?
Stormwater?
Do you
We're
wish
We're
to,
replacing pieces of the stormwater system in those areas that have deteriorated.
can you define a little bit more clearly what pieces of a stormwater, pipes, roads, drainage ditches?
Yes, all
All
of
of
the
the
above.
above? Okay.
In Trees, it's the road. It's first, the pipes are being enlarged because it's starting to take more water than it did 30 years ago or 40 years ago when it was built. So it needs a bigger pipe. So we are enlarging the pipes, putting all new storm drains in, and then finishing the road when it's over. Now, other areas of that neighborhood have already been done. So it's just more of the same because Forest Hills, that's the one I'm talking about now, was built in the 70s and 80s and with metal pipe, and metal pipe only lasts 20 to 25 years. So we are improving the system.
I understand that. But we go back to my area where the storm drains are falling apart. The bricks are in the bottom of the ditches. It's been known, and it's not on here. And that's fine, because he knows what I'm talking about.
John, we are doing those drains. Those drains can be done by our staff.
And the one
So
that,
these are the
the
ones
one
that
that was
do-
just done 6 months ago is already falling apart.
Well,
Yes, it is. The neighbors have told me. The bottom line is, we have this on here, and you're talking $2.5 million to fix something that should be ongoing and fixing.
That's exactly what we're doing,
But
John.
it needs to be
That's-
explained, not 3 projects. All I want to know is, we're
John-
getting the bang for the buck.
John, there are 3 projects, and we posted a detailed explanation on the website, and we've just had a detailed explanation. Do you have a specific question?
I just wanted to know what they're going to do.
Well, he just explained what we're going to do.
I don't know. He said it's $1.5 to $2.5 million.
Yes.
And we don't know what that's going
We
to be.
won't know that until
Don't
the
know what it's
bids
going to
come.
be. And if I'm uninformed, then
Well, I really don't know, unless you have a specific question.
my specific
He's just
question is,
twi-
what
he's-
are they going to do for the $1.5 million?
He's just explained that twice. I mean, he can explain it a third time if you like, but he's just explained twice what we're going to do.
And Jeff, can you tell them
yeah.
about the one project that the road's failing, and that's why you have to do all the underneath? You know, because the road's failing up above, so maybe if you would tell
Well,
them
not only
that.
that, but the drain was surcharging, which tells us that the system is antiquated.
All I want to know is what we're paying for.
You're-
Yeah.
We're paying
you're
for 3
a-
projects.
At all 3 of these projects, you're paying for pretty much of a total overhaul of the system underground.
Okay, if you want, then I will read to you the entire description of all 3 projects.
No, not, that's.
That's what you're asking me to do,
I will go on the line and look it up and read it. But
and he's just explained it. Yeah,
what gets me frustrated, Mr. Henry, is just as the gentleman with the groundwater problem that was here earlier. Now, if you remember or not, Mr. Henry, 20 years ago when you were on the board and we were over at the other building and my house flooded and flooded and flooded. I put in 2 sump pumps and then the township came in and put in new pipes.
yes.
And it flooded and flooded and flooded.
But we're
I've
not,
came to the conclusion that I'm going to have groundwater in my property because I'm the lowest house in that area. I've came to that conclusion. But what I'm saying is we're spending money after money. And I understand that when we have groundwater problems, we have groundwater problems. But all I'm saying is it says 3 projects.
yes, which have been explained at least twice here tonight. I don't understand. Yeah, John, look, we've explained twice what the projects are. There's a paragraph-long description of complete detail
I'm
on the
gonna go look
website,
at
which
it.
you can look at. This does not involve your neighborhood or your property. It's true. And we don't know what the price will be until the bids come in. That's why we have a bidding process. There is nothing more that can be said about it.
All I want to say is this. When it comes to $1.5 to $2.5 million, I, just as a township resident coming to a township meeting, would like a little more explanation of, we're going to dig up the road, we're not going to dig up the road, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And that's what they're bidding on. Because what's going to happen is, they're going to put it out for bid, you're going to get the lowest bid, and then 3 months later, Mr. Chrisman's going to make a motion to change order number 1 and raise the price. That's all I'm saying.
That is an entire.
That's hypothetical.
That's hypothetical, and that's
Hypothetical,
possible.
but it's happened, hasn't it?
John, yes, it
It's
has happened, and I
hypothetical.
can guarantee you it will happen again because there's rarely a project that once it gets started, and anybody who's done any amount of construction or any amount of renovation knows, once you start, you find things that you aren't aware of until you get started. That is just a fact of life. We do not like change orders any more than anybody else, but it is going to occur. That doesn't mean that anything was done wrong in the design process or the bidding process. That's just the way things happen. And for those listening at home, if you go to our website, you can read the complete description of it. It is all there. That's why we are now posting all this information on the website. Do we have any other questions from the board? Okay, in which case, I think that you have answered our questions. Thank you very much. We will now move on to continued discussion of proposed zoning ordinance amendments to accommodate an age-restricted housing plan. And,
Wait a
what's
minute, wait a
that?
minute.
Mr. Chairman,
You missed
item
one.
7, we have HRG again.
Oh, sorry, oh, pardon me,
Item
That's okay.
6. Item
I
number
struck the
6.
wrong one off on here.
Yeah, HRG's still on, sir.
Was this like the HRG night, or what?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so we're going to talk about
We're up to Andrew.
preparation of grant applications first.
Thank you, board
Andrew.
members. Andrew Kenworthy with Herbert Rowland and
all
Grubik,
right.
for those of you that don't know me. I suspect that the prior conversations tonight might be a good segue to what I wanted to present to you this evening. I had a conversation with the manager, Mr. Wolf, talking about some funding opportunities and just some background information on that. Just wanted to present it to you, just make sure you're aware of those, and then maybe identify a couple projects that might be beneficial for the township. I think, as we all can agree, there are plenty of projects to be done. HRG is very grateful to work on many of those capital improvement projects with you, and typically there is not enough funding to do all the projects that are out there. One service we do offer and work with many of our municipal clients on is funding opportunities for the capital improvement projects. We actually have a whole group of people at our office that work on this, beside the engineers who actually design the projects. We track a number of funding sources. Some of the bigger ones we're tracking right now include CFA, Commonwealth Financing Authority, PennDOT, DCNR, and a number of items such as that, who all provide various funding opportunities for improvement projects for different municipalities. Those projects are exactly what the township does on a regular basis. They include things such as flood mitigation, stream bank restoration, greenways and trails, recreation, watershed protection, transportation initiatives, traffic control, and items such as that. The funding opportunities vary depending on the project, the specific situation. Obviously, we like to target for the township grants. They can run anywhere from a 15% to a 50% match, so that the township does have to put up some money with that. One particular item this year, 2018, is the CFA multimodal program. They're offering a no-match situation this year. So to put in an application for some transportation funding, there would be no match from the township required. The awards, often there are limits on those awards. Oftentimes we see those in the range of $100,000 to $300,000. The multimodal grant that I was looking at could be up to $3 million. So there's a lot of potential on some funding opportunities for projects that are in the queue for the township and maybe just aren't at the top of the list due to funding restraints at this time. Just looking at some specific projects, I know some of the things we've worked on before, the ARLE grant and the Greenlight Go. We've worked with the township on those on Colonial Road. And I know the staff has done some independently. I think Terry Balknight has done some for recreation. I think the Possibility Place surfacing was done through a grant. And I think Randy Allen is working on some stormwater items as well. So I just wanted to present to you that there are a number of potential funding opportunities. I think the biggest message I wanted to provide tonight is there is an opportunity to maybe coordinate those, leveraging one against the other, or coordinating projects that might entail multiple components, such as a stormwater project that has a roadway component also. You might be able to leverage one of the other funding components and take care of two items in that regard. So with that, really just wanted to say there are a few projects that I know that are in the queue. As just evidence, we work regularly with staff on various projects within the township. And I know there are some projects right now that are being considered. Certainly some items that might be of benefit are some intersection alignments. I think some of the items specifically, I think on Devonshire and Colonial, some alignment issues there. Route 22 and Blue Ribbon by the Sheets and Ollies, some alignment items there. Potential pedestrian access issues, certainly along 22, we have some issues out there. With the development happening out on Linglestown Road, there might be some opportunities to coordinate with some developments that are going on out there, plus some grant opportunities. Again, leverage some of those private funds with some grant opportunities the township might pursue. Stream restoration, I know there's a project being worked on now. What's that? At Colonial Road and Stonebridge Apartments, just west of the Colonial Park Mall. I know there's some consideration for some improvements on the stream bank restoration there. Some grant funding possible for that. We're doing some work on Earl Drive with the township. Again, some best management practices to improve the drainage conditions there. And I know Wolfersberger Park is still sitting out there for consideration of future work. Again, there may be some funding there. And again, going back, I think Ms. Balknight might be working on Oak Park, I believe it is. She might be doing that independently, which is great. But again, some park recreation type funding with that. So really just my purpose tonight is to make sure the board is aware of something of those funding opportunities. There are a multitude of them. We do work with them regularly and would be happy to work with your staff or whoever you might want to maybe identify some of those. And like I said, leverage one against the other, pick out the best one. We've had a lot of success. Most recently, you're going to see some work in Susquehanna Township, right across the township line, right along, what's that, the Asian Bistro, up to the Sheets, in that area, doing a significant sidewalk improvement project for pedestrian access with Susquehanna Township. That's through this multimodal funding. So certainly there's plenty of projects within the area of the township here. There's always an issue with funding all the projects that the township would like to do, but maybe we could get further down that priority list if there was some interest in pursuing some of those. Certainly there's a lot of detail on the various funding opportunities and the grant programs. Probably too much to present to you tonight. Would be happy to answer any questions or provide any additional information you might be interested in, though.
So these grant opportunities could be used to obtain money. You mentioned the sidewalk project in Susquehanna Township. We have a number of areas where there are gaps in sidewalks because sidewalks were not required when some properties were built. I'm assuming somewhere we have a list or a priority of which areas we would like to go to. Could these grants would be available to do projects like that, to build additional sidewalks to fill in gaps to make them more walkable?
Correct. Pedestrian access is a big concern right now, particularly with PennDOT, making sure there's safety for pedestrian access as well as maintaining the roadway and any separation that may be required for that or the appropriate protective scenarios to keep pedestrians and traffic apart. I don't think there's a whole lot of bike lanes in the township right now, but again, that's another one that is becoming very popular with many municipalities providing pedestrian, bike, and vehicular access and the coordination of those in different corridors.
Any question?
Yes.
Mr. Chrisman?
Andrew, I'll have a comment and then a question. The comment is, thank you very much for doing the highlighting in that beginning that says, note, municipalities, county, city, borough, incorporated town or townships may not be required to provide a local match for the application round. And I appreciate that. However, there's one word in there. It's a legal weasel word. It says may not be required. Have you been able to research the may as opposed to will not be required.
Yes.
I
We have.
apologize, but that's a world, and that's a legal thing that I always look at.
Absolutely. We're well aware of that. That verbiage comes directly from the CFA program language. It is confirmed, however, that in this application cycle, there is no matching funds required.
And is that in writing anywhere?
I would have to get back to you on that one.
Well, as I said, may is a weasel word that I know that it gives them total flexibility in terms of granting, the awards, because even if we follow all the rules and regulations, and I applaud what you're suggesting of how we may incorporate that into our grant, I just don't want to be in a situation where they have the total latitude. It says may, and I want to be able to pull out the document that says will.
I do
Thank
not
you,
have that
Andrew. So
document with
continue
me.
to monitor if you can find anything in writing that would give us, the approbation to move forward in a positive way, but with that bullet, if you will, if we need to apply it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, have we ever done anything with the CFA? Have we not applied to them before?
We have applied for sanitary sewer. We were successful once, and we were unsuccessful the second time.
Okay. And a lot of this is probably identified in a roundabout way or directly in our comprehensive plan that does it matter for them whether it's been formally adopted? Or, I know there are certain things you can do in these applications that'll increase your odds, and they want to know, especially if it's no matching funds, they want to know you're totally committed and you got all your ducks in a row and this is going to happen. And I don't know if you've gotten that far down. Like I know for the first grant deadline application is the end of July, I think.
Correct.
So I don't know if that would be an impediment and I don't know if we even have, the schedule is to have the comp plan approved by then, but hopefully that wouldn't be
In a couple weeks.
a factor because sidewalks and many of these other improvements are in that.
Yes, certainly having a current and accurate and complete comp plan would be a wonderful component to include with this. I would say it's not a necessity. Certainly, a lot of the projects are fairly obvious and can be supported with other documentation other than the comp plan.
Because this and the comp plan will take to actually make all the zoning changes and then actually begin to plot any kind of work we need, pedestrian. So this could be an option. This is something we should look at next year as well. And
I was just going to say, this is, many of these programs are annual programs. Certainly, there's some information I think you were provided that is for the current application cycle. Many of these programs are ongoing, so there's not a specific deadline. Other programs, they get funded to different levels each year, but they are regularly funded every year. So, to your point, if you're not prepared yet, maybe it's something to tee up and look at, prepare for a new, future funding cycle.
And do we have, at least, like I know we don't have a grant writer per se, but do we have do we just kind of do this by surfing the web, or do we have a system in place?
We have a system in place for the standard grant applications. We do not actively search for the unusual, but we do participate. CDBG, Dauphin County Local Share, the CFA, DCNR, we're active in all of those programs.
Okay, and I know every few years, and especially every new administration that comes into the state, they want to put their name on something, so either they get renamed or at least a couple of grant opportunities arise and some go away.
Correct.
So I just, hopefully that, and we're all plugged in, I know, with PSATs and a whole bunch of resources. So hope we're just up to date on that.
Board members, one area that you have applied for funding for is the Colonial Road Corridor. Now, you have recently been successful in receiving between $60,000 and $70,000 in funds to install the adaptive signal system within the corridor, but that corridor needs significantly more improvements than just signal system improvements. You have two intersections that need realignment. Andrew, we have applied in the past for funding for other improvements. We have not been successful. Is there a program that you would recommend right now that would be conducive to those three intersections along Colonial Road?
To your point, the multimodal program is probably the most applicable on that. The status of where the planning is with that in comparison to the application requirements may not be lining up quite at this time. Again, a future application cycle might be better for that once some advanced planning has been put into that and some identification of an approach to the correction of the issues there.
I will note the application deadline is July 31st.
Correct.
Well, we will have completed the comprehensive plan adoption by then. So if that is necessary, there's no reason to wait another year for that. We'll be ready to go.
What I believe what Andrew is referring to is more site-specific planning as opposed to comprehensive plan. For instance, what properties would be effective, potential acquisitions involved, what are the solutions at the intersections, where would you install multiple turning lanes? Not an engineering design, but an engineering concept.
Correct.
We don't have any of those at that stage at the moment?
Not for the Colonial Road corridor at this point.
Okay. Something we might want to get moving on then.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially in light of the next discussion,
Exactly,
that we're going to
especially in
have.
light of the next one.
which I appear to be anxious to get to because I keep moving there. So, any other questions from board members? Mrs. Lindsay?
Chris, I had asked Mr. Wolf, we did apply, or Terry's working on the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program. So she is working on that one, so.
Anybody else? No? Mr. Hawk, okay.
Thank you,
Okay,
Andrew.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
And now, we will have, did you have something else, Mr. Chrisman?
No,
No.
thank you.
You were, yeah. Now we're going to have continued discussion of proposed zoning amendments to accommodate an age-restricted housing plan for a 149-acre tract on the east side of Colonial Road, and it still says south of Earl Drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, by Traditions of America.
Good evening.
Good evening.
David Biddison with Traditions of America. I was before the board about a month ago, approximately. We had submitted an ordinance. The board, as way of a refresher, had requested that we meet and discuss with the township planning consultant. We've had the opportunity to get comments from Mr. Smeal, have a phone call, and we've revised the draft to incorporate all of his revisions. And we've submitted a red line of that and the new draft ordinance. We're here tonight to request that the township move forward with the advertising of the ordinance and allow it to move to the Planning Commission and the county review. With that, I can answer any questions.
Would we advertise it before it goes to Planning Commission?
Not usually, no.
I was going to say, that didn't sound,
It has to go to the planning commission first.
that's what I was
And at some point in
thinking.
time, that could overlap, but
Yeah.
we wouldn't, advertising is not the first thing that you do.
So the next step would be to send it to the Planning Commission for them to.
That's
yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Okay. And the local, and the county planning
And the
commission?
county, yes.
And county,
That's correct.
yeah. Mhm. Any questions? I know we've heard about this before, but Gary?
I have a question, I think, for Mr. Wolf in relation, and I heard your comments that you received, Mr. Schmeel's comments. You have now incorporated them, and for the sake of discussion tonight, and I really don't want to do this, but I'm making an assumption, and I don't like to ever assume anything. Mr. Wolf, that our staff have reviewed his responses in relationship to Mr. Schmeel's, and and you said they all have been incorporated. I want to make certain that they have all been incorporated in compliance with what we currently have in effect, because if there's going to be any conflicts, I'd like to know about them now.
I don't see any conflicts, Mr.
Okay.
Chrisman.
and I'm assuming you don't because you simply followed Mr. Schmiel's comments, incorporated them. If our staff at this point has reviewed them and believe that they are in compliance with what we are doing as well as our philosophy here in the municipality, then I will not have any questions because I will wait until the next review. But that's only me speaking, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not hearing anybody wanting to do anything other than that. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we forward this on to Mr. Leidy and the Planning Commission?
Just, I guess, real quick, looking at Mr. Schmiel's notes, the current ordinance requires all age-qualified developments that receive a density bonus to include at least one person age 55 or older. And then the proposed amendment would require 80% to be age qualified. So that's what we'll be putting in the new, we're lowering that requirement from 100% to 80%.
80% is actually what is required under the federal HOPA law. So we're incorporating it in the R1 to be considered consistent with the Housing for Older Person federal statute.
Mr. Wolf, our other age 55 off a unit deposit, isn't that 80% over there?
I don't recall.
Okay,
I believe, my recollection is that it is.
okay, that's what I thought, because it's a 55 plus.
It is.
Yeah, okay.
And Mr. Stein, I know, has reviewed that, that development plan on multiple occasions.
So do we have to do that? We got to be, to comply with federal law?
Yes.
I just,
Regrettably.
from a technical standpoint, we like to make sure that we're 100% in compliance with what the federal law is, and the federal law says 80%. Whether you can deviate from that, I defer to Mr. Stein.
When that statute was enacted, essentially, it legalized discriminating against people because of age and housing. So it legalized housing discrimination. But they wanted to do that in order so that they could you could develop these senior type communities, and that's so if you don't follow the statute, then you're in violation of the law, and you can be subject to a housing discrimination lawsuit. So yes, you do have to follow what that statute says if you want to do an age restricted community that's 55 and older.
Okay.
But it would be discriminatory to require you to be under 55 to live there.
That's correct.
So federal law is not exactly consistent, is what you're saying?
Well, it only legalized the older end of the spectrum
Okay.
to have that effect. So it's one of those policy choices, I guess. But
I was only asking because it's, we know a lot of the benefits of the older,
End of the spectrum.
developments with older people.
Be careful how you phrase this, Mr.
Please. We know the benefits and fewer children and cars and all that stuff, and that it, as opposed to 100%, it'll be now 80%. So some of the benefits will go down a little bit. That's all I was saying.
And none of us are old enough to be there.
Yes, none of us are old enough to live there. So,
Thank you.
one thing, I know that it's not necessarily pertinent to this part of the process, but as you've heard earlier, we've had a discussion about traffic issues on Colonial Road. As you proceed with your development, we would ask that you keep that in mind and a priority, because in every development plan that comes before us, traffic is the major concern whenever we take public comment for very good reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be an issue with this project moving forward.
I understand.
But this can go to the Planning Commission. Yes?
Henry, would it be appropriate for public comment?
Yes, if you would like to come. Are you finished with your?
Yes.
Okay, he's,
One-
oh, hold on one second, sir.
In here, one of the things that you're going to be doing, Colonial Road is a very, very popular road and very heavily traveled. I assume that you're gonna do an appropriate traffic study.
We will work through the planning process. I'm not sure we've gotten there, but we're going to work through the normal routine planning process, and we've been listening to the issues on Colonial Road, so
Okay.
we were discussing it and we're attentive.
We-
I'm
I
sure
think
it
that
will
would
be,
important for the travel amount on that road.
and I'm sure you're gonna hear this repeatedly, especially from, as you leave here, because you've heard it tonight, you're gonna hear it in planning commission, and you're gonna hear it again when you come back. So be prepared.
Will do.
Is
When the
the-
planning study was actually recommended by our planning consultant, Mr. Schmiel, that it be done and that it be done as early as possible. So it is one of the things he flagged. Not necessarily all the requirements of the PennDOT study, but it is, it's something he flagged and get it done early.
I'm not trying to be evasive. I just want to segregate the zoning process from the planning process to
Right.
make sure that
Right.
it doesn't all get lumped in together and become very confusing. So that's something we're used to routinely handling during the planning process.
I did mention that it wasn't germane to this phase, but it is something that, you know, as you move forward, it's going to be a major
Right.
public comment. Yes, sir. Would you please come to the podium?
Could I just ask a real quick question? Do you think you'll be entering and exiting off of Colonial Road with the development?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Stay nearby.
I will. I'm not leaving yet.
Thank you. Nick Barrett, 4905 Harmon Drive. Complete coincidence that I'm here this evening hearing this. So I have heard rumors that this is going in, and I want you to know this is a stone's throw from my house. So I don't know where the appropriate public comment that needs to come in, but I think you can already know what I'm going to say. I sure hope a groundwater study is taking place.
Yes.
I also hope that consideration is being taken for the stream and the lack of the big pipe that goes under Earl Drive that has to handle all the water from that stream that comes from Dick's, Kmart, everything through Wright Bill, all the way down to my house, and now you're building this. I hope the water goes the opposite direction. So I don't know when the appropriate time would be, but I hope that all of you take that into consideration, because it could only compound the matter.
Planning
Thank you.
commission.
Just point of clarification, this is not a done deal. Yeah, it's not going in. They are still at an early stage of asking for changes to the zoning code to allow them to do what they want to do. After that, then we enter the planning process, which is where what you're discussing and the roads that we were discussing will come in.
Thank you.
But yes, that will be a very big component. And I'm sure you will keep us focused on that.
I'm glad it's on public record. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay. Well, we at the last meeting had a discussion, we had a request for funding from the Central Pennsylvania Conservancy. They wish to acquire some land and put it into preservation up here on Blue Mountain. Ben, if you want to come forward, I know you made a request, you needed some matching dollars or additional funding. Do you have anything you want to add to your comments from last time? As we'll have to discuss whether the board wishes to be involved in helping to finance the project.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for having me last week and for putting this on the agenda again tonight. It's not always easy to ask for help, and it's not always that we're invited back when we do. We discussed last week that we're working on an important project for the township, one which I think this is a clear partnership on. At the time, we expressed that we had an outstanding need of $100,000, and now as we finalize the grant application, we have a much more clear picture of what money we can secure elsewhere, and so we are prepared to make a request now to the township for $40,000, which represents about 1/10 of the total project value. Knowing that we needed to complete this project, we have streamlined the project a bit and reduced it by 15 acres. Landowners who, again, are willing to sell down the road. This is an actual outgrowth of Alexander Boyd's donation of Boyd Bigtree in 1999 and our Schreckengast acquisition with the Mahonies in 2001. The township supported that acquisition then, and this is a great opportunity, as we discussed earlier, to leverage private partnerships and state grant funding to secure opportunities for local recreation. So just to, as the map that I shared with you guys might represent, Hawker Park is the key access for Lower Paxton Township residents to Boyd Big Tree Conservation Area, period. There's only one official access for Boyd Big Tree Conservation Area. That's all the way down over the mountain at the foot on Fishing Creek Valley Road. So that's very restrictive for folks who have limited time after work or school, or who may have a disability and may not be prepared to hike all the way up the mountain. This is a key access at a local level because it's closer for folks in the township, and even statewide, and that's why we can count on state support, because it opens up opportunities to do section hikes and to use the Boyd Big Tree Conservation Area in many, many more ways.
And did you happen to contact Miss Mahoney?
We have not gotten a hold of Miss Mahoney. No.
Okay.
Thank you. That was my question, Robin.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. I just wonder if they were able to reach the offices. It's Union Deposit Corp. If we,
Yeah. Had you tried?
Paul's
Did you leave a
offices are Union Deposit Corporation. You know where
Our
the,
on Union Deposit Corporation.
yeah, you know where the, what's the hotel now? Could change its name, where we have Rotary.
Best Western.
Best Western
It's Best Western. You know where the Best Western is?
Hotel and Conference Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know where the Best Western is?
Okay.
The next building down is Union Deposit Corp's headquarters. So if you need to go physically, that's where you need to go.
Okay.
All right?
I may go knock on some doors, absolutely.
There you go. You go pound on doors. I have a follow-up question. Since the amount that you said originally you needed 100,000 to 40,000, my question to you is, are you looking for cash 40,000, or because you're working with municipality in your proposal, would you be interested in in-kind services?
Well, because it's an acquisition project, the state has a very limited set of in-kind services that it will accept as match. Now, our purchase options prescribe a June 1st deadline with a 90-day extension once we secure 75% of funding, and another 90-day extension for closing. And so what we would really need is a contribution in cash or money sometime around early fall of 2019.
And just real quick, thanks for coming back.
Thank you,
By the way,
Supervisor Chao.
this is an exciting project and I think a worthy investment. Now, and I can see the actual lots in this map that you sent us. And I was asking before, just out of curiosity, I guess there's a 15-acre lot, there's some on the bottom, and then there's some up where the trail is. You only need a certain amount to actually get trail access that you want. And then there's a whole bunch of that south of that. Are there any plans for that, or is that pure just conservation? There's a lot of extra land in addition to that which you need for access.
Right, so there are parcels directly south of the parcels that we need for the trail access. Those are on really steep land, and those appraised the lowest because they don't have clear access or, great building characteristics. So they were good value for the money, but moreover, once we acquire those tracts, it really represents a contiguous greenway that covers not only the ridge top, but the foot of the ridge, and everything that's visible from so many points throughout Lower Paxton Township. It's a natural extension of Boyd Big Tree Conservation Area, and that's significant in its use and accessibility for the public who stops at Hawker Park and is able to use that land or to find a place to hunt on that land.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, we have before us a request for a $40,000 contribution. And George, this money would come from funds that would be contributed by developers in lieu of.
If you receive,
If we receive it.
if you receive it.
Which we do not yet know. Obviously, this is 2019.
You don't know what you get, board members. It's different every year. For instance, in 2016, we received $144,850. Last year, we received 45,750. It varies every year. Those funds are, once received, are required to be used within 3 years.
Is there any current balance?
There is a current balance. I'm believing, though, that it's all spoken for
It's all spoken.
in our multi-year capital improvement program. As an example, the project that we propose to do in Brightwell Park, along with the Heroes Grove project, could be funded with those funds that we have on account.
So if we choose to give the money, we're taking a risk as to whether or not it might actually materialize out of this fund, or we would have to find another way to cover it.
Correct.
Okay. Well, any thoughts by the board as to what you would like to do?
I'd hate to ask Ben to come back again, but I'm going, because we had asked you to contact Ms. Mahoney, I would like if you would contact Ms. Mahoney and see if she would be able to contribute anything. And then once you've talked to her, even if she says no, then I would like to know, what she says.
Tell her to
So,
use the mic.
what? I know,
Speak
'cause
more
I keep
directly
my-
into the microphone, please.
If you could contact her
Yes.
and then see if she would contribute any of the funds, and then you could get back to us.
Okay, and the $40,000, that does, we are expecting $35,000 in private contributions at that rate too. And so Ms. Mahoney's contribution will go to closing a need that we're expecting to meet elsewhere outside of the township's contributions.
And Robin, I was having difficulty hearing, were you
I know,
telling
because I
him?
turned my head, I'm sorry.
No, but we're suggesting, because I was gonna say, if you didn't, and I didn't hear what you said, it's Susan that you probably want to reach. It's Susan, not Paul.
Right, I
Because
said Miss
Paul's
Mahoney.
probably in
Yeah.
Vail, or, I think
That's why I
they're in
said Miss
Florida right
Mahoney,
now.
yeah.
But Susan comes in usually on Tuesday nights, I think, and she's here Wednesday. I think she comes in Tuesday nights, there Wednesday, and I think flies back to Boston on Thursday. If you need to speak directly with her or the administrative assistant in the office.
But you're suggesting that private contributions are projected private contributions are what got us down to $40,000.
Well, that and cutting out some of the property, cutting out the pot
Yeah.
acres tracts, and getting a $10,000 contribution in the last week.
Mr. Wolf, if we don't have this readily available, you said we'd have to look at other, what options would
Others.
there be?
I mean, you have a general fund balance. You could draw upon funds that you have on account.
Well, Mrs. Lindsay has suggested that you follow up on the inquiry for another potential private donation, and regrettably, you'll have to see us again. Regrettably on your part, not ours.
Not on my part.
Why don't you follow up on that, and then we'll take it from there.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And that now brings us to item 10, a proposal for legal services through CapCog, and we're talking about renewal of the Comcast cable franchise agreement. Mr. Wolf.
Yes, board members, you have cable franchise agreements with both Comcast and Verizon, and those franchise agreements are negotiated in accordance with the, Steve, help me, the Federal Cable, what's the name of the act?
It's the Federal Communications Act.
Of 1994?
I believe so, yeah.
So we have been negotiating franchise agreements which typically run 10 years for a significant period of time. The Comcast agreement is coming to end, and it's time to negotiate. And we have a proposal from the Cohen Law Group out of Pittsburgh to provide negotiation services and franchise review services to members of the Capital Region Council of Governments. Now, anytime Lower Paxton Township has negotiated its cable franchise agreement in the past, it has been on a multi-municipal basis. Early on, it was municipalities in Dauphin County banded together to negotiate. once we joined the Capital Region Council of Governments, it's now a larger pool of municipalities that have banded together in the past to negotiate cable franchise terms. To cut to the bottom line, board members, if we would negotiate cable franchise services alone with Comcast through the Cohen Law Group, and by the way, that's basically all the Cohen Law Group does is cable franchise agreement negotiations for municipal entities. The cost for services would be $10,500. If we do it through the COG and we receive 26 or more municipalities participating in that project, the fee would drop to as low as $7,875, almost a $3,000 savings. Board members, we actually have not only negotiated on an intermunicipal basis in the past, but at least the past 2 times with Comcast and previously with Verizon, we have used the Cohen Law Group through that intermunicipal format. The type of negotiations is set forth in the proposal. The proposal is 15 or more pages. I won't sit here and specifically read it to you, but it would be my recommendation that if not this evening, at a future board meeting, the supervisors authorize the participation with the Council of Governments in the negotiation of the Comcast cable franchise agreement through the Cohen Law Group. Any questions? I'd be happy to
I have a
address
question,
them.
but my comment, Mr. Chairman, would be, you know, this is an easy decision. My question for Mr. Wolf is, when we did this before, I can't remember, how many municipalities did we have? Were we in the 10 to 17? I think we were, but I can't
Oh, no, we were
recall.
more than that. I think
So we were
under
the 18
20.
to 25 group,
Yeah,
which
before.
is even better for us. Yeah, no, I think this is a no-brainer.
As long as
Yeah,
it's
really.
cheaper.
Did you say we use this law firm for Verizon?
This law firm has negotiated at least the last 2 with Comcast and the one with Verizon. And the Verizon agreement and the Comcast agreement, they're not mirror images of each other, but they're very similar.
And Verizon's up in 2 years?
I believe it's 2 years, yes.
Any other questions of Mr. Wolf or any comments?
Only thing I'd wonder is, does anybody else do this? Does anybody else offer this? Or anybody else do this, you know?
I have never been approached by another law firm that does this type of work. Steve, are you aware of any?
I'm not. I'm sure there are firms in Washington, D.C. that do the work. But around here, I don't know of many.
That would likely drive the cost up significantly. We would have a considerable cost savings by participating
Yes.
in the COG
Oh, absolutely.
definitely.
Oh,
consortium
it looks
here.
pretty clear. I just, you always want to know how
Yep.
much competition's out there.
We can either take action tonight, or we can have Mr. Wolf put it on next week's agenda.
Well, if the board is in agreement, I don't see any reason to delay what we're likely going to do anyhow, if anybody would like to make a.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the proposal for legal services through CapCog in regard to the renewal of the Comcast cable franchise agreement as presented by Mr. Wolf.
So moved, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hawk. Any additional questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. And item 11, ought to know.
None?
No items. Anything we should know? George?
Nothing further.
Nothing further. Improvement, there is a difference, Mr. Chrisman. That's, number 11, improvement guarantees, and I see we also have a resolution here to discuss, so.
Yes, board members, you have one improvement guarantee that is for Autumn Oaks Phase 1. It is a reduction to, I believe it's $12,078.
Oh, that's right.
And that's in accordance with the engineer's recommendation from Mr. Hines.
Yeah, who's a very busy man tonight. That's, any questions or comments about the proposed change?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the improvement guarantee request as reviewed and recommended by HRG.
Improvement guarantee has been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Resolution 2018-18.
Yes, board members, this is a resolution approving a planning module for a development by DNC Realty Company at 1199 Colonial Road. It's an existing medical office that is connecting to the public sewer. The development is there. It's a connection to the public sewer. And the planning module basically states that we have capacity in our system to allow this connection.
So they had a septic system
Yes.
before.
Yeah. Mr. Wolf, is this the one on Colonial and Earl or Colonial and Devonshire?
1199 Colonial,
I just wasn't sure of the number.
well,
I mean, those are the two medical places that I'm,
well, the one on Earl faces Earl.
that's right, the entrance is on Earl.
Yes, that one faces.
Oh, but the other one I think faces on,
Colonial and
Devonshire.
Devonshire. It faces both.
so where's the medical on Colonial? Oh, I wonder if it's on the other side of this,
This is, yes, this has to,
right before the little shopping
correct.
center.
That's
Okay,
by
and
the
that one,
apartments.
Even though many times people will come off of Crumbs Mill, they I guess their address is actually on Colonial.
By the apartment.
Because there is a,
It's further down Colonial, close to your turn off. There's
Near
there's a couple apartments on the, going north on the right-hand side.
Oh, yeah.
And
There's a
then
medical
there's a
office in
little
there?
medical office in there too, further down. They're pumping up into the sewer line where the apartments are.
okay. I'm still not sure, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, it's not Old Colonial
I'm
Road,
still
is
trying
it?
No,
Where it goes down in, so it's right on Colonial.
Well, I
Well, the
guess
address is-
regardless of where
bridge?
it's located, we want them to connect to the
We
sanitary
do want them to
source.
connect, yes,
Oh.
regardless.
Figure out where it's
I'll
at.
figure it out where it is.
Okay.
Mr.
You can do
Chairman-
a- You can do a site plan, or site view.
I'll do my own road trip. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve resolution 2018-18 for the plan revision for, I need to find it here.
Is the actual address. in
Fill
the-
it. For the development of the parcel of land identified as 1199 Colonial Road Medical Office.
Mr. Chrisman has moved that we adopt Resolution 2018-18. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hawk. Any comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Mr. Chrisman, it's out on the right-hand side, it's the chiropractor. Down on the right-hand side, going out Colonial Road. Mhm.
We might want to install a GPS system here on our computer.
Okay, I know exactly where it is, yes.
He just looked it up. Yeah, I think it's the chiropractor.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was, yes. There's some history there. Okay, yes, okay, thank you.
We're all now confident in the location of the property.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Very good. We have no additional items on the agenda, and our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 17th at 7 PM. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Yes, yes.